So, other than the book of Romans, probably the deepest, most theologically rich book in the New Testament is the book of Hebrews. And we don't know really who wrote the book of Hebrews, but we do know that he had a lot to say about having a mature relationship with Jesus. Particularly in the fifth chapter of Hebrews, he says some things that I think a lot of Christians either don't get or haven't thought about, or maybe they don't want to think about it. But let's read a few verses from the book of Hebrews. We're going to read verses 9 through 14. Now, in these verses, Jesus is being compared to a figure that we see just very briefly in the Old Testament, a guy named Melchizedek, who is the king of Salem, and he has an encounter with Abraham. But here the writer of Hebrews is comparing Jesus to this Melchizedek guy, a priest whose priesthood is eternal. And he says, he's talking about Jesus, he says, and having been made perfect, he became to all those who obey him the source of eternal salvation, being designed by God as a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. Concerning him, that would be Jesus, we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. Did you catch that? Dull of hearing? It gets even worse. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the oracles of God. You have come to need milk and not solid food. For everyone who partakes only of milk is not accustomed to the word of righteousness, for he is an infant. But solid food is for the mature, who, because of practice, have their senses trained to discern good and evil. Now, we've been taught that, people that teach the Bible are special. They've gone to Bible college. They're priests or pastors or reverends or whatever you want to call them. They're professional clergy. But the writer of Hebrews here says that the people that he's talking to, they should be ready to be teachers by this time. They should have this level of spiritual maturity. They shouldn't be focused on the very basic elements of the gospel. They shouldn't be just focused on, Jesus is my Lord and I'm saved and I'm going to heaven. They should be beyond that. They should be learning the deeper things. They should be ready for solid food. They shouldn't be still drinking milk. They should be ready to teach others, to share the faith that they have, and at the same time to be learning the deeper more complex and more mature aspects of a relationship with Jesus. They should be able to learn more about who Jesus really is and what he wants from us, what he wants us to do. But they're not ready to do that. They're not ready to learn more themselves, and they're not ready to teach anybody else because they haven't grown. They haven't become spiritually mature, but yet they should. And so we need to ask ourselves, are we spiritually mature? Are we ready for solid food, or are we still drinking milk? It's not just our pastors and elders and deacons, the leadership of our churches, that should be teaching people the gospel, that should be ready to share their faith with other people. We should all be ready to teach. But again, we have to ask ourselves, are we ready to learn the deeper things? And are we ready to pass on what we've already learned to those who are not as spiritually mature as we are? Or are we still babies drinking milk? If the writer of Hebrews was writing to us today, would he say the same thing? Would he say that he's got much to say to us that's harder to explain, but since we're dull of hearing, we're not ready to be teachers at this time, even though we should be, and we need somebody to go over the basics with us again? Something to think about. Where are you? Are you ready to teach? Or are you a baby that needs to be handed that bottle again? Let me know what you think in the comments.